All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce you to my next guest, producer, writer, best known for creating My Secret Identity, Family Matters, writer on Happy Days. And of course, you probably know him from episode 351 of this podcast. He's a return guest, co-wrote 50 Years of Happy Days, a visual history of an American television classic with Brian Levant. But right now, welcome back to the show, Fred Fox Jr.
Thank you so much. Great to be back.
Great to have you back. I know we talk so much Happy Days, and people should go listen to episode 351. We might touch on a couple of the things, but if you want to hear all about jumping the shark and all that, and Fred wrote that episode, go tune in to episode 351. That's awesome, and we dive in. We're going to cover more Fred Fox Jr. today. I'd love to hear just your origin story and how you got into it. I know your dad is super famous, is like a super famous writer.
Right.
And how much of that did that play in? And I'll let you go and then I'll interject.
Very good. When I was growing up, Dad was a very successful, very funny man. He worked for Bob Hope, Jackie Gleason, Lucille Ball, George Burns, Red Skelton, and it was interesting. Growing up, I thought it was so fun that Dad was a writer. Never entered my mind that I would follow in his footsteps, which, looking back, I don't know why in the heck I didn't do that. Brian Levant is just totally incredulous that I didn't even... Brian knew my father's name before we even met because he was a child of television, as you know. The first thing I did in show business, I was at UC Santa Barbara, and one summer I worked as a stagehand, and I'd go to the different studios, and it was a lot of fun. I'd get a grip call, a prop call, electric call. I prayed I wouldn't get an electric call. I thought I might electrocute somebody, but it all worked out. But I worked on the Aunt Margaret special, and it was a lot of fun. And then my first real job was there's a game show on ABC called The Girl in My Life. And the premise of the show is a lady would bring a girlfriend to the show and just say, hey, this will be fun. But the woman would be honored and get prizes. We actually gave away a used Volkswagen. During that, I took a comedy extension writing class at UCLA Extension. And there was a guy there who was just so funny. He was working for a big advertising agency worldwide. And we thought, hey, let's write a spec all in the family. So my father's agent, Sylvia Hirsch, submitted the script. We didn't hear anything for a couple of months. And then we got a letter from one of the producers saying, boy, you guys are very funny, but I'm sorry we're through for the year. And the gentleman I wrote it with was Gary Shandling, who kind of went on to have a nice career, just, so funny. And then I got Gary an interview to work on The Girl in My Life. We're in charge of the audience. A guy named Rick Downs was the leader. We would call sororities, assisted living places, and just say, hey, guys, it'll be fun. Come to the show. So we'd work all week, trying to get the audience set, which is very important because he would surprise the lady in the audience. And then someone would call Friday at 5 o'clock and say, oh, Mr. Fox, I'm sorry, we can't make it. So it was crazy. So Gary Shandling went to the producers and said, well, thank you so much, but I really want to be a writer. And he went off to write, Sanford and Son, and went on. And then my lucky break was New Year's Eve, 1975. Cindy Williams called me and said, oh, Fred, I'm doing this show called Laverne Shirley. If you'd like to be kind of my assistant, go for when rehearsal is over and I go home, you can go to the writer's room. And I thought, wow, I was working for a small advertising agency at the time. So Cindy got me a meeting with Garry Marshall, and I walked in Gary's office. The first thing he said is, oh, so you're Freddie Fox's kid. And then when Gary and his partner, Jerry Belson, came out from New York to be writers, one of the first shows they got on was the Joey Bishop show. And Gary said that Dad was, very encouraging and nice to him. And then Gary said, now I know you want to write. And I almost went, really? But I didn't. He said, but right now, we just want Cindy to be happy on the set. If she needs her dry cleaning, picked up, or a car wash, that'd be great. So fortunately, it was a great car wash. It was very nice. I'd go to the writer's room after Cindy left, the stage. And it was really interesting because even though Dad was a writer for years, I kind of knew the process, but it was kind of thrown into kind of on-the-job training. Gary was very smart. When the new person when we were, writing the script or needed a new joke, I would have to write a joke on a piece of paper, hand it to a real writer, and they would pitch it. If it bombed, they wouldn't say, "Oh, it's a stupid new guy." But if it got a big laugh, they said, "Oh, that was Fred's." We talked about doing an episode where Ron Howard and Anson Williams was going to do a guest star. And someone said, "Oh, who's going to write the episode?" And Lowell Gans said, "Well, we have someone in mind." So the next day, Lowell asked if I wanted to write the script, and I was obviously thrilled. But the timing was interesting because my parents were leaving. And I had to have the script in the first draft in 2 weeks. My parents were leaving the next day for a 2-week vacation. And I'm sure, I would think if Dad were here, I would go to him and say, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" But that didn't happen. Fortunately, they liked the script, and Garry Marshall asked me to go to Happy Days. And I felt badly for Cindy because, there was Garry Marshall, Tony Marshall, then Penny Marshall, and Ronnie Hallen. And poor Cindy was alone. And she said, "Oh, Fred, no, it's a great opportunity." So I took the job, and I promised her I'd get her car washed for the next 20 years to make up for it.
So when Cindy Williams offered you this job, she knew you wanted to be a writer. So that wasn't accidental.
We went to high school together. And I was class comedian, and we were very good friends. So we'd kept in touch over the years. I actually hadn't talked to her for quite a while, but when she did American Graffiti, another classmate named Lee Margulies, who was at the LA Times for a billion years, interviewed her. And I said, "Oh, please say hi to Cindy." And he did it. And he said, "Oh, please have Fred call me." So we stayed in touch. And then if she hadn't called me, I could have been back at Hertz Truck Rental as an executive, which was one of my first jobs.
So she didn't know you necessarily wanted to be a writer. Well, she just thought you would be good at washing cars.
That's pretty much it. Yes, thank you. So it's amazing how people get in the business. I was good at washing cars, and that's how I got in.
Cindy Williams went to high school with, so that was serendipitous right there. Your first writing job was with Gary Shandling. So I guess that was his first as well.
Right.
And you guys write a script for All in the Family, or a spec script. Cool. And then you're dealing with Lowell Gans, who went on to write like every major thing, I think, in the 80s, right? And 90s even.
It's incredible. He and Babalu Mendel, so many good movies. Their first one was Night Shift, which I thought was great. And just they went on for, Splash and Parent, just incredible.
Gung Ho, Parenthood, City Slickers, Forget Paris. I mean, it's like, there was a time where I think every movie had their name on it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just so funny. And what a great, I was so lucky, so many great mentors with, Gary and Lowell. And then I'll mention some others as we continue.
Your dad, Fred Fox. So, all right. So he's writing did he write the actual jokes? Was he the voice of some of these main folks? Like, did he write a lot of Bob Hope's actual material?
Oh, and exactly. When I was born, I was writing for Bob Hope. He gave me a pair of little boxing gloves and my twin sister some roses, which I still have. The roses are kind of gone, but I have the boxing gloves. But Bob Hope was just very funny on his own. They were shooting a Bob Hope special, at NBC. Dad gets a phone call from my mother. My father stuttered for a while, and he gets a call, phone call from my mother. He comes back to the stage, and he's just ashen. His face is ashen. And Bob Hope goes, "Fred, well, are you okay? What happened?" He goes, "I'm going to have twins." And he goes, "Oh, you don't only stutter when you talk," which I thought was very, very funny. We might have to edit that. In fact, some part I've mentioned when Mom and Dad got married, Bob Hope was very nice and let him use his house in Palm Springs. And then he got a phone call at midnight and said, "Hey, Fred, we need some jokes. Are you busy?" So he got along with Bob Hope. God, they wrote for Bob and George. His partner, Seaman Jacobs, wrote for Bob Hope and George Burns for, many, many years.
It's amazing when I was looking at your dad's IMDb, because I don't even know that he wrote for every Bob Hope special, but assuming he did, I didn't realize there was this many. I mean, it's like scrolling and it's all Bob Hope.
I know, a plethora of Bob Hope. And then they also worked on the road pictures, which, they didn't get credit, but since he was on staff, he just had a great, great time.
And he wrote for George Burns. I saw he wrote Oh God Book 2, not the first one, just the sequel. Your dad wrote for one of my favorite shows. I mean, A Happy Days was one of my favorite. which you wrote, but like other than that, he wrote like a million. Sometimes I just randomly say large numbers when it's like, so we don't get caught up in the exact number. He wrote like a ton of Love Boat episodes.
Yeah, he and his partner, Stephen Jacobs, yeah, he really did. I think he really had a voiceover, a little acting part in one of them.
When you're writing, there's like from what I can tell, roughly a 10-year overlap where you're writing and your dad's writing.
Right.
So how was it like the Foxes writing for all these major shows together? Did you ever work with your dad on anything? Or?
No, it's that's a very good question. Fortunately, I was always busy writing, and then dad wrote until he was like 80, 85, for Hope and stuff. So there was actually never really a time. I guess we always could have, but to be honest, I don't know if it would have worked. For example, when I was doing Happy Days, Garry Marshall hired Harry Crane and Milt Josephberg as consultants, and Milt did Jack Benny and Lucy, and then Harry did the Honeymooners and the Dean Martin roast. And some of the younger writers thought, why is Gary hiring these old guys and stuff? And of course, Brian Levant, and I thought, this is great. So it's funny, but yeah, Dad and I don't think it ever came up, which is very, very bizarre. As anyone, we wish we could kind of go back. I wish I'd gone back after graduating from college and said, hey, Dad, tell me about this stuff. But I think I showed him the only Laverne Shirley script I wrote, and he was, seemed very happy with it. So that, that felt good. But yeah, a very funny man. And Dad wasn't the kind who would like tell jokes, but just kind of just very funny and conversations. And I was just very, very lucky.
Were your styles similar? Your approach, style?
I would, pretty much. I think one time I read one of the Hope specials and stuff, and I thought some of the stuff was very funny, and other stuff was either dated or. But it's funny. We really never talked about writing. I mean, even when I was doing it, because he was busy, I was busy, which is very bizarre. I agree with Brian. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, I think a lot of times some of those collaborations might come during a down period. But like you said, your dad wrote till the end of his life, pretty much, right? It sounds like,
right,
and you were like in your heyday during that like kind of last 10 years. So it's probably just. Yeah, it's cool that you were all doing your own things.
Yeah, no, it was. I look back and I was just so incredibly lucky to work as long as I did, and with the people were just incredible.
Did you get to meet? I'm assuming you met Bob Hope at some point because you worked for them, but like Lucy or any of these other folks these classics.
I think the only time I met Lucy, as I recall, was there was a very famous club in Hollywood. I think it was called the Daisy. And that was during the backgammon craze. And I think I went there once, and Lucy was there. And I think I introduced myself and said, she was very nice, but kind of wanted, I think, get back to her backgammon games, which I understand. But yeah, no, she was very nice. And then met George Burns once, and he was great. It's funny, most of Dad's friends, he had a lot of friends in the entertainment business, but a lot, outside the business, which was nice. Good combination. But yeah, I met some very, very funny cohorts of dads.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're in the kind of Garry Marshall world. You're done cleaning Cindy Williams' car,
right.
and so you're recruited over to Happy Days.
Right.
Now you did some other stuff with. Let's talk about some of the other in that ecosphere. You acted on. I think you wrote. Did you act and write for Blansky's Beauties? Tell me about this, because this is something that I think I originally uncovered in your book. I looked it up a little bit. It's kind of a spin-off that I don't think anyone ever talks about.
No. Yeah, that was interesting. It was during a hiatus on Happy Days, and Gary wanted to do Blansky's Beauties. Yeah, it was interesting. Nancy Walker was the lead, and then, Showgirls. And one time Gary said, we were doing a show, and Gary wasn't around a lot because, we started to get kind of the movie thing. This is a little before that, but he goes, let's see, one of the girls needs a boyfriend. Oh, Fred, you'll do that. And then kind of walks out, and I went, excuse me? So it was fun. And then I did, I guess, I was Freddie the bellhop. I did a couple of bellhop roles on series. So maybe it's not over. Maybe I can play a bellhop someday again. But it was a lot of fun. But it was interesting. Miss Walker wasn't very happy with the show, I don't think. And then they brought Roz Kelly over, from her Happy days, and that didn't fare real well either. And then they're going to do a Pinky pilot, but that didn't work out. There's kind of some friction between Roz and the cast, so which was too bad.
Right. Roz was Pinky Tuscadero.
Right.
And then Nancy Walker was in everything. I mean, she was in Rhoda. She was in,
yeah.
But she was also in, what was that famous commercial?
Oh God.
You're soaking in it. It's too bad because she was awesome. So
yeah, she was. And then Scott Baio was on the series, and we had an acting scene together, which was a lot of fun. Fun working with Scott.
But this is not him as Chachi. This just happens to be Scott Baio. And what was the show exactly? Like, how would you describe it? The log line?
The log line. Nancy Walker runs a Vegas show with 6 or 7 starlets, and just the ups and downs of dealing with everything, getting the show ready, getting it done. But yeah, it just lasted. There was a guest star once on the show, and he hated this one line. He said, "This isn't a funny line." So of course at the show, huge laughs, and he said, "Well, it's still not funny." But anyway, it's just interesting entertainment story, I guess. But it was funny.
Eddie Mecca was on this as well, right?
Oh yeah, Eddie was great.
The Big Ragu.
Big Ragu.
Nancy Blansky, Nancy Walker's character, was introduced on Happy Days as Howard Cunningham's cousin.
Right.
And then that became a spinoff.
Yeah. That's what led to that.
All right. 13 episodes, 1977. I wonder if it's even anywhere you can find it. Maybe on YouTube somewhere.
It's very interesting. On eBay once, there was a Blansky's Beauty script for sale. It was the one I wrote. It was like $400 or something. It was amazing, but people, it's great that people, like to get the old scripts, and
people love scripts. It's fun. I think I have like one of the original Tim Burton Batman movie scripts.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no,
I might have been a copy of it, but I got it
even if it's a copy, that's great. Yeah, I love them. Love scripts too.
It's fun to kind of read it and see.
It is. Really, it is.
And so you're saying the Pinky was almost a spinoff, and I remember we talked last time. The cast just did not like her. They loved Leather Tuscadero, but not Pinky.
Oh yeah, she was fantastic. So yeah, Suzi Quatro, and she's still singing these days, which is great.
I know. I've been trying to get her on the podcast. Suzi, if you hear this, come on.
Oh, if I can get a hold of her, is she in London? I think, but I'm not sure.
She's from Detroit originally, where I'm from. Yeah, and so
just a very sweetheart and fun. A lot of fun to work with.
Yeah, most of your acting roles your character was named Freddie, just except on Family Matters,
right?
Which it might have been. It said Sukiya Singh. I don't know what that. Yeah, but
that was an episode where Urkel's cousin, played by Donna Summer, was very, very shy at a karaoke contest, and she got up and just sang very well. So before that, I sang. There's a hit song in the '60s. Some people call it sukiyaki, and so I sang that, and I was in a kind of a Japanese robe, and then there's an Asian gentleman that sang "Home on the Range," and then Donna came up and just belted out. Just an incredible singer, obviously.
Yes, she's got the pipes for sure.
Well, the Happy Days episode I did where I played a band leader that stole a song from Leather Tuscadero. One reason I kind of mentioned this at the end, I had a conversation with Fonzie. And this is 1970. I had worked with Henry for 2 years. And when we're having this confrontation, I call him a 2-bit hood. I felt like his presence. It was interesting. I wasn't scared, but I thought, God, this isn't a good situation. I could get this shit. I mean, beat up. But he was very good in that role. But afterwards, after the show, I got him in the parking lot and I gave him a punch. Not really. I wouldn't do that. But
I got Henry right here, and I got Cindy.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I can. The first time when I met Henry Winkler in person, the very first time, I was shaking, and he's the only person I've ever met in person where my body had a reaction. Oh, I was because I was I think my body was like, dude, you're standing with the Fonz.
Interesting. Yeah, that's just the nicest guy in the world.
Nicest guy in the world. Okay, and then on Laverne Shirley, so you went back later to show Cindy Williams that you're not just a car cleaner, you can also be a bellhop again. And this was an episode with Fabian.
That's one of my favorite episodes. Not because I was in it, but their reactions when Fabian started singing, at the end just blew me away. Cindy's knocking her head on the floor, and then Penny's, grabs his leg and she's dragging him. Yeah, that was a fun episode.
Okay, so some of the other stuff you wrote let's stay in this ecosphere. Let's stay in the Garry Marshall world for a second. So Joanie Loves Chachi.
Oh, right. Yeah, when that happened, they had either 4 or 8 scripts to see, if it would work or not. 2 of the producers were in charge. I wrote an episode, Brian wrote an episode. And when they shot the first 4 episodes, I was on staff in some of the other kind of Happy Days group. And the first 4 episodes did very well. And then Gary came to me and said, Fred, do you want to stay on Joanie Loves Chachi, go back to Happy Days? And I said, I'd like to go back to Happy Days. As we covered it in the books, Scott Baio said that after the 4 shows, they didn't have the, Happy Days writers or producers. And he felt that the, writers didn't really know, the characters as well. He felt, that didn't help. And then also, I think they were against Dallas or some, powerhouse. But fortunately, it was great they came back, because when Ron Howard left, Chachi and Fonzie Henry said how great it was to have Scott there after Ron left.
Right, kind of elevate, kind of fill in the gap with someone comfortable already on the show, right. So you don't have to bring in someone new.
Right, exactly.
You had Al
Molinaro, right?
Molinaro. I don't know why I can never say his name. He was on every episode of Joanie Loves Chachi, and then John Travolta's sister was
Ellen.
Ellen was Scott's mom. I mean, I know this was only 17 episodes, but it must have been like right in 7, 8. Yeah, so this would have been my prime Happy Days watching time. And so this spinoff I would have watched, because I can remember and picture theme song in my head where they're playing, right? Him and Aaron Moran. And so I don't remember anything about the show other than it happened.
Right. Well, yeah. It's funny when Ryan and I write in our book, 50 Years of Happy, sometimes we went, who wrote that episode? And then remember, oh yeah, we did. It was funny. But yeah, again, so glad that they came back. But it was and it was funny because, they sang a lot on Joanie Loves Chachi. And Scott said, why in the hell do they have me sing? I can't sing, but, Aaron was great. But, they did some albums, and it was too bad it didn't last. Well, I'm not glad it ended, but I was happy to have Aaron and Scott back.
I should try and find those LPs if they exist somewhere. That would be fun. All right, so they came back, which is good. I think the name of the show is what I think, because it was so endearing, their love, and so the name of the show, I think, makes it memorable, even more than the show. Right. I mean, the episode you wrote is everyone remembers.
It was amazing.
All right, so you wrote for the Bad News Bears TV.
Brian. Yeah, Brian Levant was, the showrunner, asked me to do an episode. That was a lot of fun.
Here's Boomer. I'm not familiar with that one as much.
That was fun. It was a cute little dog. And then Rich Cron wrote an episode, and Jack Elam was the star, which was fun.
And then Webster, I am familiar with.
Right.
I heard an interview. That was not a pleasant situation for you, Webster.
No, that's the only. 99% of the shows I've worked on have been fantastic, but that was one that was. I went there. Brian and I mentioned the book. After Happy Days ended, it was the kind of the antithesis of the Happy Days group. Because, everyone got along. It was known as actually a happy show, and Laverne Shirley was kind of crazed at times. Yeah, when I went to Webster, some of the writers there said, Fred, don't go. And after Happy Days ended, executive at Paramount asked if I'd go to Webster, said, Fred, I'm sorry, I can't produce. And I said, that's fine. But there's a lot of the showrunners and the Alex Karras and the Susan, they didn't quite get along. So it was brutal to go to that from Happy Days. And then Brian went straight to showrun Mork and Mindy, and he says, boy, that was tough. Not because of Robin or anything, but it was just a tough. I think what Brian said when he got there, threw away 7 scripts, and they kind of had to start from scratch. So that was obviously tough. And Brian, Brian's great showrunner.
Okay, so speaking of Brian and you being great showrunner, so you guys, late 80s, My Secret Identity.
Right, that was. I had an overall deal at Paramount I mean, at Universal, and so did Brian. So Brian was the one that actually, well, we co-created it, but Brian was really nice. He had pitched it to Dick Limhine at Universal, and it was a go. And then Brian called me and said, Fred, I just pitched this. It would be great if you could do it with me. And after I fainted, I got up and said, thank you so much. But what was interesting, what I understand, originally it was going to be an hour show for NBC. And then all of a sudden, that didn't happen. The way I remember it was, this is when Universal and NBC were doing Miami Vice. And I think they got in an argument over the licensing fee. And I think they basically said, okay, we're not going to do Secret Identity. So all of a sudden, possibly have an hour show on NBC. That died. And then I don't remember how much later, maybe 3 weeks, a month, they wanted to do it first run syndication and shoot it in Toronto. But Brian didn't want to go to Toronto because he wanted to stay with Beaver. So I went to Toronto to be a showrunner. It was one of the toughest jobs I ended up ever having because we had a writer's strike, couldn't do any scripts. And then we had to have half Canadian writers, which is fine. But obviously, I didn't know the talent pool. So I flew up there. Oh, we could have 2 American writers and the rest Canadian, which is fine. Fortunately, got some very good Canadian writers, Eric Weinthal, Bill Murtaugh. But the real tough part was there were, instead of just Universal being in charge, there was Universal, the Canadian Sunrise, the Canadian production company, Telefilm, the Canadian government, then the network, and then Scholastic Productions. So I had to pitch stories. On happy days, we'd pitch to, get okays from ABC or Paramount, but 5 entities. So you would call them to get notes. And someone would be great. They get back the second day, sometimes a week later. It was just incredible, but it was just a great, the cast was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. Then we were nominated for an international Emmy, which is very nice. And that was in New York, and went to New York. And, they always say it's nice when you're nominated, which is so true, but we ended up winning. One of the reasons I mentioned is the main reason is Audrey Hepburn presented the award. And, I'm not starstruck, but that was very, very exciting. And just a very sweet lady, great slow dancer. No, I lied about that, but a great, very sweet lady.
That's awesome.
So then, and then when that ended, Brian had 4 more episodes. They ended up shooting most of the last season of Beaver in Orlando. And Brian was very nice and asked me to come down and, help with the last 4 episodes.
Had you worked on the Beaver reboot?
Yeah,
prior to that?
Yeah, actually, I was working on that when we pitched Secret Identity, and all of a sudden it sold. Yeah, I was on Beaver maybe 2. It's funny, on IMDb it said I wrote 2 episodes, but actually wrote or co-wrote 21, which I thought it was a very good show, a lot of fun. And Brian wanted to do a musical. We did a musical thing, and Brian Wilson guest starred, which was incredible. And I thought, God, how did we get Brian Wilson? But gentleman named David Leaf was the writer on the show, and he was best friends with Brian.
Very cool. Very cool. Oh, wait. So back to the Secret Identity for a second. The award-winning My Secret Identity. And, okay. So this starred a young Jerry O'Connell. So you had a big name.
Yeah.
Had he done Stand By Me yet? He must have, right? Yeah.
He had done Stand By Me, and Jerry was fantastic. And we would, for those who don't know, it was a comedy action show, and he had superpowers. So sometimes late at night, he'd be in this harness, be freezing, never complained, and just a lot of fun. And Derek McGrath was a co-star, who was a Canadian actor, was very good. Yeah, we had a great cast. I did 2 seasons there, but it was great.
And because it's a Canadian show, did you have to have like a piece of Canada somewhere in the show, like some kind of reference, or was just having the writers enough?
Just having the writers, but we would mention certain places. But and then as I said, we had no scripts and stuff. So I spent almost like if on a weekend, if I went to have lunch, I thought, oh my God, I'm goofing off because I came up with most of the stories. But the 2 guys I mentioned were very helpful, and we had to have a Canadian crew, and it was very interesting. Some people that had worked in Canada said, "Oh, Fred, you're going to be in trouble. The Canadian crews are not," but they were fantastic.
It's now considered a cult favorite. Where is this? Is this streamable anywhere? Do you know?
No, it's not. It's funny. It got a lot of good reviews. I don't know. It's not rerun here. When it aired, it was on, I think, Thursday night. They had kind of KTLA here had Harry and the Hendersons, Out of This World with Donna Pesco, and then Secret Identity. Oh, I left after the first 2 years, and they did one more season.
Yeah, because there's 72 episodes. It could be.
Yeah. So I would love it. We did a lot of good episodes, I think.
Because I know Brian, when I was talking to Brian, we were talking about how you really can't watch the Beaver show anywhere and the new Leave It to Beaver. And so like with this, My Secret Identity, with so much stuff available, is it frustrating to know that like, oh, this good work we did, no one can even get it anywhere?
Yeah. You know? Oh, no, it's tremendously frustrating. But I think the reason the Beaver episodes aren't available is, God, I don't know how long ago, but there's some big fire at Universal Studios, and I think they're all burned up. All the tapes and stuff that's what I think Brian mentioned that.
Oh, really?
You know, it is frustrating because I thought, Secret Identity was very good, and New Leave It to Beaver, we did some very nice. Interesting you mentioned Secret Identity. Brian, Jerry, and I thought, we wanted to give it a shot and redo it. And about, 2 years ago, on a phone call with Jerry, two of his managers, an agent, Brian, and myself. And this is verbatim. Basically, they said, oh, yeah, this could be good, but you guys are too old, so we're going to get other people. So, and again, I'm so thankful for my career, but just because, we're older now doesn't mean we can't do it. But
I'm going to do the math, and I believe you would be proportionally the same older than Jerry would be from that time frame as well.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, my math might be off, but like I think he's just as older as you're just as older.
Yeah, true. And he was a lot of fun to work with, and I'm so happy that he went on and has done very, very well.
Well, when I talked to David Zucker, and this was earlier in 2025 before the new Naked Gun movie came out, we were talking about how he felt that he was aged out as well, and that he wasn't even considered to bring back the thing that he invented, the whole art form.
It's interesting to say that because he was on Instagram, and he basically said he wanted to redo it 7 years ago, but they basically, like you said, you're too old. And then I thought the first Naked Gun was very good, and the second one, not.
Well, comedies, I think in general are hard in terms of movies too.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean? It's like when you strike gold, let it be.
Exactly. But I mean, just to me, getting a movie made, even if it's a success, I don't know how it happens at times. It's hard.
Yes, that is true. And then your other like just huge thing is Family Matters, which is a huge thing. It's like that's probably right in line with, I mean, Happy Days for some people, right? Depending on generation you are, how old you are. Talk to me about, you came in, it was already kind of running, right?
I came in the second season. When I got back from Secret Identity and Brian in Orlando, I got a call from Michael Warren, who was, Bill Bickley's partner, who, they created the show. And Michael said something like, oh, Fred, we hired Dave Ducline to be a showrunner, and we have this weird thing about he wants to hire you. I mean, and I said, my God, great. So yeah, I started the second season, which was just, again, it's so like, that I was on there 8 years and just great cast and a lot of, but the parallels, Fonzie was, not supposed to be a big character. And as Urkel wasn't either. And then he took off. So I was very interested in that. That happened twice.
Was the dynamic similar in terms of, so on Happy Days when it became, almost got named Fonzie in the Happy Days, right? Right. I think you're familiar with the history.
Sure.
And, but a lot of the stories, and even if there's some interviews with like Ron Howard, where there was a frustration, thankfully, I think from what I can gather, Henry Winkler didn't have a huge ego and was probably is the nicest guy in the world. Right. So probably didn't explode in the wrong hands. That could have.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it could have been. It was interesting. In the book, when we interviewed Henry and the cast and stuff, Henry said that the cast it was nothing against Henry, but when Fonzie kept taking off and stuff, it was, example in the book, one day just before a run through, Ron Howard is on stage, and the Paramount executives and ABC executives are talking to Ron, and like Henry walks in, they all rush to Henry, which is brutal for Ron. And Ron finally said that it really did start to bother him. There was like you had mentioned, executive ABC wanted to change it to Fonzie's Happy Days or whatever. So Ed Milkus and Tom Miller met with Ron and talked about this. You'd still be on the show, obviously, but we'll change the name. And first of all, Henry thought that was the stupidest idea. He said the show is the relationship between Fonzie and the Cunninghams. And then when Ron walked out of the meeting, Gary was outside. Gary said, well, how did it go? And Ron said, they want to change the name. And Gary just looked at him and said, that's never going to happen. And Barbara Marshall said, Gary probably would have walked off the show if that happened. And there's a lot of us probably would have. So,
was there any of that paralleled with Family Matter?
Yeah,
Family Matters while Jaleel White was blown up?
Oh yeah. Oh, I got there. Second season when Jaleel and Urkel took off. Because originally, the show was for Harriet, who was on. Jo Marie Payton was on Perfect Strangers, so it was supposed to be her show. So when Urkel took off, obviously. And I don't blame her. She was always nice, but that's frustrating. And then the whole cast, I think, got to a point where it was getting a little irritating. But then I think they all realized that the show could have been canceled possibly if he hadn't. The story I heard was it was kind of midway through the first season. There was a prom or something, and Laura needed a date, and then Eddie wanted to set her with someone, and then obviously Urkel comes in. And apparently that night there was a fraternity there, and they just started yelling Urkel, 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 and then all of a sudden, just the show took off. But I think after a while it wound down. But I think there was still kind of it was tough.
Wow. Yeah, it's got to be rough. But but Reginald VelJohnson was coming in off Die Hard.
So Die Hard, he was so good in Die Hard.
Yellow Dye number 5. Yeah. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
The cast. I love the cast. The cast was great. Oh, then last year we were on CBS, and then it didn't do as well, and that was that. Oh, and then recently they wanted to redo it. And it was another kind of age discrimination. Warner Brothers called Bill Bickley and said, "Hey, we'd like to do this. Not these words, but basically, we don't want you involved. We'll just send you some money." And then that happened, but it didn't take off.
That's horrible. I don't know why, because you think the sensibility of like you guys doing My Secret Identity, the fact that you were in that mindset then, and now you're older and you've carried that with you this whole time, you would be the perfect people to adapt, or the people who did Family Matters to adapt it, because you were part of that whole shift. You're not, this isn't my observation, but it's like they talk a lot about now where the people now creating things are creating things based on the things they grew up with. And so it's not like new. So it's like, it would be someone who grew up with Family Matters now taking over Family Matters. I guess Brian did that a little bit with Leave It to Beaver, but like, but I guess, but if that's all you're doing is your only reference is, he did a million other things too, though, Brian, right? And then brought that sensibility to bringing back something. This family, you led Family you were there to the end, right?
Yes.
And is it still the longest running Black sitcom in TV history? Oh,
gosh. Boy, I think so. Like, Jefferson was on it quite a while. I'm not sure exactly. But yeah, I would say definitely one of them. It's rerun quite a bit on BET and some other stations.
Ratings juggernaut. So you have quite a resume here. And then there's a couple other cool things that you mentioned to me, that you co-wrote a musical, Merry Go Round, with the Sherman Brothers.
Right.
I like how you used, when you emailed this to me, he wrote, I wrote this with these Academy Award winners, Richard and Robert Sherman. I'm like, the Sherman Brothers? I'm like, it's like, that's a big deal,
Oh, well, I was, the other one we'll mention, Ray Bradbury. But it's so interesting in this business how things happen. Years before that, during a Happy Days hiatus, maybe 78-ish or 9, Susan Anton did 4 specials for CBS, I believe. As I said, it was a hiatus. So Jack Stein, who represented Susan, asked me to be part of the writing staff which was very nice. And how I met then, just a couple of years before, I was just walking in Westwood, went into a restaurant, and they were there, and we met. And he was very nice and remembered me, so I got on that. So then, many years later, you know how we get all typecast in the business. The Sherman Brothers, with their work with Disney, they just wanted to write some songs, not for Disney, but just for themselves. So they wrote quite a few with no intention of it being a musical, but a friend named Andy Belling, who directed theater, said, I think this would make a great musical. So they hired a writer. They weren't happy with the script. And then out of the blue, I get a call from Jack saying, I have the rights to the Sherman Brothers musical. Would you be interested in looking at it? And I said, wow, thank you. I'd be more than happy. I read it, and I thought I could improve it. So Jack was nice and hired me as a co-writer. Richard Sherman was just an incredible, obviously a talented man, but the nicest guy. So I've got him just waiting to see if he's going to like it. And Richard could have been nicer and said, this is great, let's do it. We had hired a cast, rehearsed for a month, and we put on a show at the Colony Theater in Burbank. And then this was, I think the first time was like 2005. And then there's an ad in Playbill saying, it's looking good. At one point, Florence Henderson and John Schuck were going to be the leads. And then I got a call from the producer just before COVID, said, we're opening on Broadway. I have your ticket to fly for casting. And then COVID hit, and that was that. Didn't happen, but yeah, Rich. Unfortunately, I didn't have the honor of working with Robert. He was in London, as I mentioned. But and then their sons did that great doc on their dad, which I thought was fabulous.
Yeah, The Boys. I had Jeff Sherman on the show, and I loved going down that rabbit hole and learning about his dad and uncle, the Sherman brothers. Fascinating. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's like,
really is.
I was embarrassed that I didn't know about it up until then. I mean, I knew of them because I enjoyed everything they had ever done. I just didn't know. And then you wrote a children's book with Ray Bradbury, but he passed away before it got published. So
that was another throw. Was going to UC Santa Barbara, and this was like around 65, 66, and Ray Bradbury got an award from NASA, and there was an article in Life magazine where he wrote a thank you. This article stayed with me, and then in, I think, 2010 or 11, I thought this would make a great children's book about self-esteem. So I wrote a letter to I can't call him Ray, I call him Mr. Bradbury, agent, and didn't hear back for about 2 months. And I got an email from the agent saying, oh, Mr. Fox, I'm sorry I lost your thing to Ray Bradbury, but I can get it to him now. And then I think a week later, the phone rings and it's Ray Bradbury. And I just went, who is, but he said, is this Mr. Fox? I said, yes. He goes, I like your idea. Let's do it. There's a gentleman named Peter Michaels who has directed The Simpsons and Family Guy. Peter did a great job with the illustrations. So we went to Ray Bradbury's house like 5 times. Just, as you can imagine, just an amazing guy, creative, obviously, and nice. We're kind of all set. We pretty much finished it, and sadly, Mr. Bradbury passed away. And I'm really upset with myself for not pursuing it, because I really think it would be great in the schools for kids, because obviously self-esteem is important for all of us. I'm going to do that soon and try. It's interesting. Some lawyers, I have emails saying, "This is great, Fred. Mr. Bradbury not want to write it with you, but go ahead." But then he decided to write it with me, which is obviously. But it's very tough. Like if Mr. Bradbury mentioned something and said, "What do you think?" How can I possibly say, "Well, I don't know if that'll work," to Ray Bradbury? So fortunately, I don't think that ever happened. So,
oh man, well, hopefully you'll get that. Fred Fox Jr., thank you so much for hanging out with me, man. It was
thank you for having a lot of fun, great questions, and thanks so much.
Yeah, it was awesome deep diving with you without Brian. Just kidding. You guys are both awesome. I was glad to have met both of you, and then glad to have been able to speak to each of you individually. You're awesome, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and keep up your great work. Fun. Take care.